with you. I'm not totally sure how they do it these days. It used to be that at this time of year, the photo shops down on the high street would be absolutely jam-packed with people dropping off there. Remember the little films, the 35mm films that, you've had your holiday snaps? You drop them off there, then a couple of days later you come back and you've got these glossy photos and you leaf through them, telling all the kids that they're not allowed to put their fingerprints on and all that kind of thing. Well, it's not quite done that way now, is it? You download your digital camera, stick it on your computer, then you upload it to Facebook or Bebo or something like that. No longer do we have people bringing in packs of photos to church to just flick through and sitting around after church with coffee looking at them. It's a different way of doing it, isn't it? But I don't know whether you've ever noticed about when it comes to photos, both the taking of them and the looking at them, that you tend to tune into different things, don't you? So, my father-in-law, bless him, he's got his fancy big camera with his big zoom lens, and he doesn't have to take boring photos. Because all he does is take pictures of, the scenery, the background. Who's bothered, okay? Other people, they'll take pictures of you doing stuff. Other people will take pictures of you standing still, like this, smiling, all sort of contrived and false. Other people, and it's like that when you're noticing pictures, some of people say, oh, that's a lovely place that you've been there. Oh, that's a lovely picture. Oh, you're wearing really nice clothes. Or that same person will probably keep quiet if they think you're dressed like a tramp. But other people look at the look on the face. We all sort of focus in on something different in the scenes that we see. Agreed? And what we're about to do is get a look through the lens of the Apostle Paul when he's on his holidays. Because according to verse 16, he's been separated from his missionary partners, they've moved to a new city, and he's got a little bit of time on his hands. He's sitting off, waiting for them to arrive in Athens. So the question is, what is Paul going to do? What does he sort of focus in on? When he takes a snapshot of the city of Athens, what does he see? Has anybody here been to Athens? 1, 2, 3, 4. So a few of us have been to Athens, which is great, okay. So what is Athens known for? Even 2,000 years on, it is known for the history, isn't it? So you look and you go and see the great... we saw the Olympics there not so long ago. But you know the architecture. You've got the Parthenon. You've got Mars Hill. And I actually stood where Paul did this sermon. It made me feel all sorts of like, it's just a place. Yeah. So there's the great architecture in Athens. I wonder whether he spotted that. There's the gorgeous weather. Okay, absolutely cooking. I don't know whether they had sun cream back then, probably not, but you'd probably have to slap a whole load on. Then there's the culture, okay? You've got all the beautiful statues. They had the statue of Athena with a massive long spear. Apparently, on a good clear day, you could see, it was so big, you could see that statue and the spear from 40 miles away. So there's all the culture. Is that what he'd have taken a snap of? Is that what registered with him? Maybe it's the commerce, a bustling business area, colonnades, Lloyd's of London type thing, absolutely everywhere. In fact, that Greek setup and the way they set up the Athenian city has been remodeled in Washington, D.C. So if ever you go to Washington, D.C., you want to figure out where the architecture comes from. It's modelled off Greek and Roman architecture, which was originally sort of put in place, and all its grandeur was found in Athens. And then there's the academy, isn't there? The university town. It was the birthplace of Socrates and Plato. People flocked there to make ideas and to learn ideas. And let's face it, Paul was quite a clever chap. I wonder whether that was what he focused on. So I don't know whether you've got a picture of him. I don't think this one would quite fit, but here's me with a picture of Paul. And he's been on the mission field. It's time for recuperation. So there he is. He's put on his shorts. He's put on his sandals. He's wearing his shades. He's got his Lonely Planet guide under one hand. He's got Coke in the other hand. And like a Japanese tourist, he's got a camera hanging around his neck. And he's walking round. He's possibly on an open-top bus around Athens. What is it that he spots? What is it that stands out on his snaps? What is it that he focuses in on? Well, verse 16 tells us, doesn't it? And I'm guessing that none of us would ever look at this. Or maybe we would. I don't know. Verse 16. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. History records that that place was full of them. There was somewhere near 10,000 people living in Athens, which is a similar sort of number to the number of people in Speke. But the number of idols numbered somewhere in the 25 to 30,000 number. That's how many idols there were. So basically, whenever you walked down the street, you saw a little statue to some god. And they had gods for absolutely everything. And most people got up in the morning, had the cornflakes, went out, saw these idols, and thought nothing of it. It was just part of life for them. In fact, it wasn't just part of life. Their lives were built on these idols. So if you wanted something, you went to the idol. So, and they had a god for everything. You know, you had a god for travel, for family, for love, for beauty, for strength, for productivity in business, for fertility, for babies, for absolutely everything. So if you had a plan about one of those areas, and you wanted it to go your way, what you would do is go to the local temple, go to the local idol, adopt the particular rules and patterns for that kind of thing, you know, rub so many times in this way, turn up so many times, vow this number of times, pay for a sacrifice. So do the rules, cough up, cross your fingers, and those idols would deliver what you think is important in life. And when Paul went there and he saw them, everybody else took it for granted that that was just the way it was. Those were the things that you lived for. That was what you did. But look at what happens to him. He was greatly distressed. He was greatly distressed. So much so that he packed away his shorts, his shades, his camera, put them back in the suitcase, and verse 17. So, it said, because of what he saw, so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks, as well as those in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. Verse 19. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting place of the Areopagus. End of verse 18. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So you see what happened? He was so disturbed by all this idolatry. He was so... It's quite close to the translation, and you'll see why in a minute. He was so that he packed in his holiday, and he went out and he started to speak about Jesus. Is that what we would have spotted if we'd been there? I wonder. So here's your question for the next 2 minutes with the people near to you, okay? Turn to somebody near to you and ask this question. See how many answers you can come up with. My guess is you'll probably come up with 2 or 3, okay? Why was Paul so greatly distressed to see a city full of idols? Okay? That's what you're going to answer. Are you ready? You've got a minute. Turn to somebody nearby. If you're a shy person, somebody who's not quite so shy will come and find you, okay? Turn to somebody near you and answer that question. Why was Paul so distressed? I'll give you just about 15 seconds, see how many you can come up with. Okay then, Paul was greatly distressed. He packed up his bags. He said, right, something needs to be done. Why was he so greatly distressed? Who's going to start us off with a few suggestions? Why was he so greatly distressed? Don't pick on Nathan, it's his first day. You're cruel. Right, okay. No, okay. Nathan. Why was Paul so greatly distressed?
Means that they were pretty much worshipping anything other than God. So, they had even altars and unknown God.
So what? Doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're sincere. You are. Doesn't matter what you believe as long as you mean it. Sure, it doesn't matter if you worship idols or you worship crystals or what. Doesn't matter, does it? Why? Why on earth does that matter? Say that again, Carol.
If it's not true, you're not going to get what it's not.
So it's something to do with truth, okay? What was it you said there, Helen? Going in the wrong... Who are you to say this is the right direction? What makes you so special, Tim? You know it all, eh? Eh? You think you're better than me, don't you? You go to church once a week. Who do you think you are?
No, but I was big and I walked with the man and I got on it and I could tell you that it was true because I was supposed to be
You see, and you thought Andrew was sweating in the auction. I'll tell you what. Do you get the idea? What we've got here is a total clash of cultures. You've got a set of cultures who say, it doesn't matter what you worship or what you believe, just got to hedge your bets. Brilliant. And then you've got Paul who say, no! Something has happened to end all the doubt. He is called Jesus. He has come. He has lived. He has died. He has risen again. The Jewish people tried to kill him because because they, like us, are sinners and want to get rid of God. But God has raised him, and people have seen it, and it is proven. It's a total mindset clash. Brilliant. Why else was Paul so distressed? Go on, tell me about that. It's an offence to the living God. Tell me about that. It's more than a little bit rude, isn't it? In fact, it's like sticking your finger up at the true living God whose air you are breathing and whose life, well, he's got our lives in his hands, hasn't he? Brilliant. Well, those are, yeah, anything else? Anything else at all? Go on. Yeah. Could well have been a bit of a shock. Yeah, we'll come back to that one a little bit, because I think there's some truth in that, but I'm also aware that the word greatly distressed, as we're going to see, is actually used of the idolatry of the Jewish people as well, that is all written about in the Old Testament. So there's a sense in which he knows that people do it, but actually to be there and taste it, it's a particular affront to him, I think. Yeah. Okay, well, very quickly, because okay, I'm going to try and we'll get through this by 12, because my guess is that when you go to Athens, or when you go to the retail park, or when you walk around to speak, you don't get greatly distressed. Maybe you do from time to time. Sometimes reality hits us, doesn't it? But the majority of the time we just carry on as if it's normal. If we look at this right, what it will do is it will drive us into the marketplace like it did Paul. And when I say marketplace, it doesn't mean we're all going to go out and be street preachers, because the marketplace, the agora, as it is translated, was the place where culture happened. It was the media centre. It was where the news was. It was where the artists performed. If you wanted to get a name as a magician, you go there and do some tricks. It was where ideas were shared. It was where business was done. It was where political ideas were knocked around, okay? We do that in loads of separate places now. We have, well, the way I put it down is that this place was a mixture of the Trafford Centre, the Beatles Museum, BBC TV Centre and Wembley Stadium all rolled into one. It was where humanity was. And so he goes to the place where he sees this whole community at all different areas of life missing the good news of Jesus. And so he goes there. So is this telling us to go out and be a street preacher? No. I think what this is telling us is that in every area of our life, whatever corner of the marketplace you are in, there's a sense in which if you see the idolatry, you'll be pushed out. So click on that for us, will you, Kaylee, because we've got this. Just very quickly, two things. So the push to the marketplace and the power for the marketplace, very quickly. So, can I take up those two things, two or three things that you suggested there as to why Paul was so distressed? I think his first would have been a little bit along the lines of what we started off with, this idea, well, it's because he loved people. He got distressed at seeing them doing what they're doing. It's like he looked at this whole culture, and within him, he just said, what are you living for that for? You're serving this life pattern, and it's empty. It's leading you up the garden path. Now, this wasn't him being judgmental and saying, I've got it right, you have. This was genuine concern that would mean he'd pack up his holiday suitcases. This wasn't self-righteousness, because we know Paul too well to think of it like that. Now, I don't know whether you've noticed how painful it is, and this is why the TV love doing it, how painful it is to watch somebody being hoodwinked. It's why the hypnotists make so much money when they get somebody up on stage and they just... Well, they trick them into doing all the wrong kinds of things, don't they? And we say, but the idea that it ever happened to us would just absolutely freak us out. It's why we like watching TV programs like the MTV one, Punk'd, where they take a celebrity, and it's a little bit like Beatles About, for those of you who are a little bit longer in the tooth. Do you remember Beatles About? Where they pick somebody and just do nasty pranks on them, jump out with the camera and go, ha-ha, it's all a joke. And at that point, they put the false laugh on as if, thank you, want to smack you for doing it to them. It's painful to watch somebody being conned and hoodwinked. Now, this word that we've got here that says, greatly distressed, is a very strong word. It means painfully provoked or disturbed. You'll find that in a couple of the other translations. And here Paul sees these people investing their life, their choices, in things that promise so much, cost them so much, but don't actually deliver at all. Do you remember in the Old Testament where the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 42, in many ways mocks those of the pagan nations who they chop a tree down, two fellas go into the wood, chop a tree down, they've got this beautiful log, and they have to look at each other and decide, which end are we going to burn, and which end's the God? And they're having this discussion going on as if, and it's done with such a sense of this is just normal, and this is just the way it is. And Paul would look back on that and just go, no, what are you doing? Don't be daft. It's a lump of wood. And so at this point we see how up to date this is. So much of life now is about going to the right idol to give us what we want. So many things promise life but leave us empty. There'll be so many things that give a set of rules that have to be followed, with a price that has to be paid, and then even at the end of it you're left a little bit empty. So here's just two examples that came to mind recently. I think the young ladies in our culture have a real hard time because if they want love and want to be valued, then there's rules and a price to pay. So the rules are you've got to look good, you've got to wear the right clothes, you've got to go to the right places. The price to pay, if you want to be loved and valued, is often the surrendering of your dignity to somebody who's not going to treat you as you should be treated. And then whether it's a couple of hours, a few weeks, or a couple of years later, you're left feeling empty. And that's what happens when you, or one expression of when you worship at the idol of love. I've got to be loved. I've got to be valued. This will be the way that I'll get it. Follow the rule. Pay the price. But I'm still empty. What else? I found a more subtle one that I was talking to a mate of mine over in Spain. He's a golfer and he's a really top guy. And he was telling me, me and Jane suffered at the hands of this one because we wanted to go for a round of golf. Now, some of you don't realise how funny an idea that is. But it is a funny idea that we would go and play golf. Given that I struggle to hit the ball and Jane hits the ball round about... No, okay, I'm told I'm not allowed to say that. She's great at golf, my missus. And we went along and Jane even had a golf lesson. Great comedy. Watching from the roof with the binoculars. Great fun. And then we tried to book ourselves in to go to the golf course. We arrived there and they just said, sorry, no. I said, you what? I want to play golf. Sorry, no. I said, what? I said, you can only play if you've got a registered handicap from a reputable club. It's like, what? And the way it works basically is that, and I went away, we talked to our friends who've set us up to do this, and he said that basically this is the way it works. If you want the status of being able to play on a particular course, you need to have given a certain number of hours, you need to have paid a certain amount of money, you need to have waited for a certain number of people to die so you can become a member of the club, because it's only limited, don't you know. And then you are in. And he was telling me about people that he knew who'd been on the waiting list for ages, because for them, they worked through the week and they just wanted the status of belonging to the golf club. And as I listened to that, and as I thought about that, I thought, that's one way that you try to get your status. You follow the rules, you pay the price, and you're in. But it's not very secure kind of status, is it? Because he was telling me about the people who did die. It's lost. And they're soon forgotten. What happens if you lose your money, you can't go anymore? What happens if you have an injury and you can't play, so you can't keep up your handicap? Then you're kicked out. Silly example, but so obvious. And perhaps none of us are big golf fans, but you can think of all the ways in which we try to get something. Maybe it's love and value. Maybe it's status. Maybe it's just comfort and ease. Maybe it's something, and the way that it works is we pay, follow the rules, we pay the price, and yet it always seems to turn up empty. And as Paul watched, you can imagine him seeing people, families going down to these idols, and they're hungry, but they have to make an offering. So he watches the family go down, he watches the dad say, look, come on kids, all put your bit on, do this, feed the idol. And the kids said, I want that. And then, no, this will bring us blessing. Well, now, because we've given our food, we'll now get the food, or whatever else it was. And Paul's saying, what on earth are you following that pathway for? So that was one of the motivations, wasn't it? But I think the second one is even more vivid. If that's a love for people, the reason he was greatly distressed was because of his love for God. Now this word in the Old Testament, as I mentioned a minute ago, this word that we've got for greatly distressed is used again and again and again as a description of God. Of him when he sees his people being spiritually unfaithful. God is a jealous God. Imagine it a little bit like this. Jane one day says, you love me. Build me a new kitchen. And so I lovingly and painstakingly, lovingly build for her a new kitchen. Whether I ever finish it or not, that's another matter, but I do my very best. And out of my love for her, I build her this kitchen. And she's beaming, always happy as Larry. And I think that will just, to her, reinforce my love for her, and she'll feel that. But something different happens. I notice that she seems to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I notice that she seems to, well, kitchens don't have birthdays, but she buys a lot of presents for the kitchen, just to supplement the kitchen and make it even nicer. She talks to the kitchen as she's working. Some people call it singing, but she talks to the kitchen. And she caresses the kitchen, with the wipes, and she lovingly cleans the cooker-top so often, and so much so that, well, I'm not in the picture anymore. And it turns out that she's walked out on me. She's run out and left me for a kitchen. You see, out of my love, I give her something, and she doesn't love the giver. She loves the gift. That's a bit of a silly example. But here is God who has lovingly lavished upon us everything we could possibly imagine. And what do? We run out on him and love his gifts to us. I wonder whether you've ever been in a situation where someone you know in a conversation is being run down and you're having to listen to it. And half the things that are said, 3/4 of the things that are said are just not true. And you can hold on for a bit, and you have to bite your lip, but sooner or later it gets too much, and sooner or later you just have to say, he's nothing like that. They aren't like that. How dare you do that? And that's what the Apostle Paul is seeing these Athenians do with God. They're running him down by worshipping empty things that aren't close to him, and they're soft-pedaling him in some way. There was this missionary to Iran, and he said this: "I could not endure existence if Jesus were not glorified. It would be hell for me." When you taste the glory of God, you tend to move in that direction, don't you? But what about us? As we look out and speak, and we see so much of the community of speak with so little regard for God, or when he is spoken of, he's run down and miscommunicated. There are a lot of people's lives around here have been shaped by everything. They're putting their trust and their hope in everything, it seems, except the true and living God. When we hear people even say what I've said a minute ago, which was, it doesn't matter what you believe or what you do, how does that make us feel? I wonder whether you notice it and just shrug. I wonder whether you hear them say things about the Lord and you just think to yourself, oh well. No, if we know him and if we love him, and we can't keep quiet, can we? It's impossible to us. We have to say something. We have to get busy. So if that's the push out into the marketplace, what about the power to do that? Because I don't know about you, but I feel scared at the prospect of having to take on people. Not to take them on in a fight, but to actually... Confrontation's hard, isn't it? So where does the power for the marketplace come from? Now, we have a marketplace here in Speak, okay? It's probably the magazines, it's probably the school gate, it's probably the internet blogs, it's probably the national curriculum, it's probably the Jeremy Kyle show early on a weekday morning, it's probably the X Factor, which teaches you what you're supposed to value and what you're not supposed to value. They're all places where opinion is formed, and each one of us encounter that, and each one of us meet people who share those values. And so we can be there, can't we? Now, it doesn't mean that we go for a life of massive confrontation, but we can challenge ideas and we can take the gospel there, but we will be tired. Poor Paul, he's effectively trying to take on a city. Where's he going to get the resources to do that? Well, I'll tell you where he doesn't get the resources from. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, you get the resources to go and keep telling people to follow your faith because you're told this. Do it or you're not in. So it's fear. That wasn't Paul's motivation, was it? Otherwise, you get the motivation to tell people about your faith if you're just a screaming nutter. Paul's not a screaming nutter. We've seen enough of him to know that. So where does he cut the resources from? Well, the answer comes back again to that phrase we've seen, greatly distressed. Let me give you the literal translation. It means ripped with contradictory feelings. That was how God was described in the Old Testament. When he saw the people of Israel being spiritually unfaithful, being spiritually adulterous, running after these other lesser gods and forsaking him, how did God feel? God felt ripped with contradictory feelings, torn up inside. You get that? Now some people say, hold on, God's dead simple. God is just love. He's a bit like a cuddly Santa Claus, who we always threaten the kids with, if you're naughty you won't get any presents, but Santa Claus always brings the presents anyway, so it doesn't really matter how you behave, he's just love, he's simple, he just loves you. Then you've got the people who say, God is an angry God, and if you slip so much as once, he wants nothing more to do with you. He's cold, he's calculated, you fail, you're out. So you've got this simple God of love, and you've got this simple God of anger, depending on who you speak to. But here we read in the Bible that God is not simple, he's complex. He is ripped with contradictory feelings. He's torn up inside. The Bible gives us a complex God who, when he looks at us, I mean, you know this when you see people that you love destroying yourself, don't you? On the one hand, it's hard, isn't it? On the one hand, you rightly want to throttle them. Or you want to cut them off, cast them loose, don't you? But on the other hand, you just want to run and chuck your arms around them and hug them. Because you're ripped with contradictory feelings. We feel like that sometimes, don't we, when we love? If you just watch somebody seeking love in all the wrong places, you just want to go, it's just hard, isn't it? And that's how God is towards us until Christ comes. And that's why Paul tells them the good news. He tells them the good news that is this, and it comes from God. And God is effectively saying, I love you, but you have run me down. I am the sovereign Lord, and you have defied my laws. You have sinned against me, and it has resulted in your brokenness. And that's what you're living with, and the right thing to do would be to leave you to suffer and to endure that. But he also says, but I love you, and I'm coming. I'm coming to get you. I'm going to come and rescue you in my love. I'm going to deal with my anger against you. I'm going to set you free. And God in his heart is torn. He's so angry, a price has to be paid. But he's so full of love that he is willing to pay the price. Do you get that? Please tell me you get that. And as Jesus was dragged through the marketplace in public derision, against an onslaught of ideas that hated him, as he was doing that, on the way to the cross, he was freeing up the marketplace of ideas to be rescued from their own blindness and to be set free, reclaimed by him. That's what he paid to do. And that's the power. Paul had tasted that, and it had energized him. It meant that he was safe and he was secure and he could go into that marketplace knowing that he had got something better to tell them than anything else they might turn to. He had tasted it for himself, the goodness of God, the forgiveness of God, and it had transformed him. He had been transformed at the level of his ideas, his ambitions, what he was living for, and it was so powerful that it pushed him out to take on empty ideas. Now that will do the same to us if we get it. Could I push it as far as this? This is possibly one of the best tests as to whether or not you've got the Christian faith at all. If you're even a believer. It's one of the tests. If you feel the push out, if you can't keep it to yourself because you know it's true, even if you struggle with it, but you've got this push within you to get this out because you realise it's so important, then the good chances are you belong to him. But if you're sitting there and you're thinking, Steve, I don't quite get what you're going on about here. This push to, why is it so important? Why is it so free? I don't quite get it. Then can I tell you that keep asking questions. Keep finding out more. Keep looking to what Jesus has done. Because that is right at the heart of the Christian message. Does it push you out like it did Paul? That's when you'll know you've got the gospel. If you haven't, then you've still got a great discovery to make. Let's pray together. Sovereign Lord, we thank you that you were willing to go into the marketplace, the hostility that is against you, suffer its worst, pay the price for our sin, and rescue us. We pray, Lord, that as we look to that and see the power that was released there, we will be filled with confidence and equipped to pack away the suitcase of our holidays and get busy wherever we are, in whatever forum, in whatever place, standing up for you and getting the good news of Jesus and his resurrection out. We pray, Lord, that the marketplace of Speak would be won for Christ, that his name would be heard, and that the darkness would lift. Come near, we ask, for we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. What we're going to do is we're going to move to the table service. We're not going to. We did have 2 songs to sing. We're just going to sing one in a moment. But what I would like to do is direct your attention